Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the main Greenwich 38, the latest release from the brand, based in Sweden, started by two Dutchmen, made in Switzerland and inspired by New York. It's a complicated one today, folks. I get a lot of watches through this channel. Some of them go straight in and straight back out again. Some of them linger in my collection for a brief period before moving on. Some of them find their way into my affection and into my collection, and this main Greenwich has done just that. I've been wearing it as my main watch since it arrived here in Sydney about 2 months ago. But my love for this watch, and I do love this watch, is not unconditional. Indeed, it is deeply conditional. For example, I've been wearing it on a bracelet, but it doesn't come on a bracelet. Main will sell you a bracelet that fits it, but I don't recommend that you buy it. Complicated, but love usually is. Let's flip the camera and get on with the review. So, love is complicated, but this video doesn't have to be. Well, okay, maybe it's going to be a little bit complicated. As you can see here, I have 4 different bracelet strap combo options, which I'm going to show you all on. Before we go on though, you saw the pop-up, but I always like to play the siren. This video is sponsored by Main, but that doesn't mean to say this is going to be 10 minutes of gushing praise for the watch and nothing else. I do like the watch and I will tell you why I like the watch, but I also have reservations and I will express those in very clear terms as well. So this is the Main Greenwich 38 in black and orange. I'll leave a link in the description of the video taking you to the Main website. These are available for purchase for 640 euros. Now that is about 725 US dollars. Obviously your tax liabilities are yours to work out, but it does come with free worldwide shipping as well. For that price you get the Tropic strap and you get a fitted end-link rubber strap as well. You do not get the bracelet, which I have reservations with, and you do not get this second bracelet, which is the one I have been wearing. This is a knockoff glide lock. I've had it for about 5 years. It's a cracking bracelet and it's like Cinderella's slipper. Every watch with 20mm lugs that comes in the house that I like, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if it will fit the glide lock, and this one does pretty well. So this is the bracelet that it will be going back on and I'll be wearing long term. Now $725 US dollars for an original design, Swiss made GMT automatic with 2 rubber straps. I reckon that is pretty good value, but I'm going to shock you here. I reckon Main should charge more for their watches than they currently do. Yes, that's right folks, you heard me say it and I don't think I've ever said it before. I would love to see them charge more for their watches and I will explain myself a bit later on. And what do we have here? We have a couple of the Greenwich's family members come to join in the party today as well. This is the Hudson Mark II and this is the Skymaster. Now this one was borrowed from Mr. P and this one is mine, or should that be Main? I will bring these both back in at some point later. So first of all, I better tell you why I love this watch. What is it that it does, or what is it that it has that I really have been appreciating? Well, I think if you asked me to write down the perfect set of dimensions and specifications on an everyday watch, this would pretty much be where I ended up. Let's talk dimensions for a start. 38mm. I love this size of watch, a little bit smaller than the average 40. It's 12.7mm thick, so it wears very slim on wrist, 45.7 lug to lug, which is a really great compact lug to lug measurement, and it has drilled lugs, making those inevitable swaps onto other straps very, very easy indeed. 20mm lug width. I've got a bunch of 20mm stuff in the house, as exemplified by that glide lock bracelet, and on the supplied Tropic rubber strap, obviously the weights will vary. This one weighs in at 80 grams, which I think is a great weight. Further to the dimensions, it would have to have 100 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown for that kind of forget about it level, which is exactly what this watch has. Sapphire crystal with decent levels of anti-reflective undercoating, which is exactly what this watch has. The crystal on this, I have to say, is great. A good piece of glass makes such a difference, and this is a good piece of glass. It's not always easy for me to highlight in these videos the advantages of a great piece of glass. It doesn't always show up, and some of the outside shots today, yeah, you don't really see it, but inside I think it shows off itself very, very nicely. You can obviously see that blue-purple anti-reflective undercoating, but yeah, I think it's a great piece of glass, especially when combined with the black enamel dial. Now, Swiss made automatic, GMT is a bit of a bonus as well. It's not an in-your-face GMT, it doesn't have a bezel. It's one of those GMTs that's there when you want it to be. It's kind of like a three-hander. You read it like a three-hander very simply. The GMT hand is fairly discreet. Outer markings I'll show you under macro lens a bit later on, but the added advantage of having a GMT there when you want it. And I like the design as well. Nothing too complicated here today, and not everyone is going to be turned on by those big, blocky indices. But it works for me, and you can't deny that it's legible. Case finish is pretty simple. As you can see, I've got a couple of scuffs and scratches on this one already from use. High polish side, longitudinal brush on the upper lug surface, and there's a nice high polish chamfered edge running kind of from the unguarded crown back out to the tip of the lug. Main branded crown, it's the same crown I believe that they use on their other two models as well. Now, no bezel here, or that's not quite true. It doesn't have a traditional dive style bezel. It's got a kind of stepped bezel. As I said, this is two Dutch gentlemen living in Sweden, or operating out of Sweden anyway, inspired by New York. So it's not Greenwich London that they are nodding to with this one, though it is a GMT, so it's very appropriate. It's actually Greenwich, New York. There are various other nods to the New York skyline as well on the hands, and I believe this stepped bezel again, it's got that kind of deco style, like some of the stepped skyscrapers in New York City. Case back is Rolex style, but you can open it with a regular case back removal tool as well. Pretty much sterile apart from first edition, 1 of 300 etched into the centre. Not quite sure how I feel about that. I will circle back to it later on. Behind there though is something I have not encountered thus far. It's a Swisstech S24-045 automatic movement. Not a movement or even a brand I've come across thus far. I have heard of them. I believe they've got operations in Hong Kong and Switzerland and offer a choice of Asian-made movements or Swiss-made movements, and obviously this is one of the Swiss-made ones. Information is scant, but I believe it is yet another ETA 2893-2 clone, which suggests 21 joules, hacking and hand winding, high beat rate of 28,800 and a roughly 40-hour power reserve. Anecdotally, I thought this one was running at about plus 10 seconds per day, and it seems like on the time grapher, my suspicions are confirmed. So outside, under macro, they've kept everything pretty simple in terms of the dial, its layout, and the colours they've chosen. It's pretty much white on black. Tiny little bit of colour for the GMT hand, which is good, and also the GMT script. Everything is just printed on. Now I guess there's maxi indices from Rolex. Those are mega indices, but they are just printed on, as is the minute track around the outer edge and all of those GMT markers, the Arabics beyond that. So the main, which means moon in Dutch by the way, brand logo printed above the pinion, Greenwich 38 automatic GMT, and then Swiss made either side of that big index at 6. Date complication at the 3 o'clock, and it's white today, which I think balances out that big index over at the 9 perfectly. Now looking at the handset, there's another nod to the New York skyline. The hour hand and minute hand both have that kind of tapered effect as found on the case profile, very much mimicking a New York skyscraper. Lollipop second hand with high polished silver counterbalance, and as discussed, that little bit of colour on a very slender arrowhead GMT hand. All four hands are high polished silver, and the hour hand and minute hand do have a bit of bevel to them, catching the light nicely when the occasion takes them. I did say this watch was tricky to try and bring out the best of the dial and that piece of glass in particular. Have a look at these two bits of macro. I shot them from an angle and you can see how the second hand in particular is reflected on the enamel dial. It's a very, very pleasing effect, this one, and that glass is crystal clear from most angles. High polish hands, beautiful deep enamel dial, great piece of glass. I think the whole thing works very, very well as a design overall. Alright, so let's crack on with the wrist shots because I have 4 to get through today, don't I? I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference, and I just love this slightly smaller 38mm case size and shape. I think it wears beautifully on me, and therefore is going to wear beautifully on most people. Suits the overall vintage aesthetic of the watch, the unguarded crown, etc., as does this Tropic strap. It is pretty much your common or garden Tropic. I've seen these elsewhere. It is not branded as a main one, so I'm sure it's sold to other brands. The buckle and tang though is branded there. That is just printed on with the main logo. So that is the first look that comes out of the box. I'll show you the second. Fitted N-link rubber strap. Slightly unusual with that kind of brick in the wall pattern there, and a high polished butterfly strap underneath. Now this one they supply very long, so you do have to cut it to size yourself, and once you've cut it, it's cut. So don't be going too hard with this one. Always go a little bit conservative. Now that is 16mm. I reckon you can get clasps from Strapcode that will fit that nicely and convert that effectively to a diver's buckle. That was something I was considering and perhaps will purchase in the future. But those are the two straps that come out of the box. This is a main bracelet. There is the clasp with the brand name printed on it again. This is supplied as standard with the Hudson Mark II divers and also with the Skymaster. So they do sell them separately on the main website, and it fits the case a treat because it's the same case basically as the other two watches. I believe the Greenwich has drilled lugs, whereas the other two don't. But I can't recommend the bracelet, I'm afraid. I'll tell you why in a bit. And that is it finally on the knockoff Glide Lock clasp bracelet, the oyster style bracelet that I have been having tucked safely away in a drawer for years waiting for the right watch. If you ask me about the perfect daily, I would have to specify a bracelet with on-the-fly adjustability, and this one now has it all. Looking at my wrist, what I see before me is pretty much spot on. It's pretty much perfect as a daily for me, though I appreciate that's not a factory option and you're going to have to dig around if you want to find yourself one of these. And back outside natural light, I'll give the watch a little bit of a wiggle for you. You can see just how pretty it is. The combination of the enamel dial, the silver faceted hands, great piece of glass with anti-reflective, and also that flat bezel, the kind of fixed bezel. That is high polish. You get some nice light play from that occasionally. Just enough colour on the dial to give it some interest as well. On wrist on the Tropic, it's a reasonably comfortable Tropic strap, fairly compliant, short lug to lug, not particularly thick at less than 13mm thick. Yeah, a nice easy watch for most people to wear long term, I think, this one. So that's what I love, and there's plenty of it to love. What do I not love as much? Well, let's return to the case back, shall we? 1 of 300. Never seen that before. It's like they're saying you're special, but you're not special enough to warrant an individually numbered watch. What do you reckon to that one? Leave me a comment. Have you seen that elsewhere? I haven't, and I don't really want to see it again. And then there's the lume. If I haven't shown you the lume by now, you know it's poor. Why on earth is the lume poor, given the size of those mega indices? Initially, at least, it's pretty bright. There's plenty of real estate given over to lume on that enamel dial anyway, that's for sure. But when I crank up the speed, it's rubbish. It just vanishes. Anecdotally, it's not as bad as this. You know, the camera is not doing it any favours here either, but yeah, it should be much better than that given how big those indices are. One niggle you're going to notice if you do keep this one as a daily and wear it long term is that flat bezel, it looks great initially and you've got that kind of reflective surface when you look down at the watch, but that flat surface gathers muck and grub and you're going to have to give it a clean every so often, otherwise you'll see that rather than the shiny reflective surface. And why don't I recommend the original bracelet then? Well, only 2 holes of micro adjust, which is pretty useless. And you see that cheese screw? I had a hell of a time sizing the bracelet for the Hudson. Not the only screw that I cheesed as well, and I know I'm not the only person to have issues with this main bracelet. As mentioned, this is Mr. P's Skymaster. It came on a bracelet, but he too had dreadful issues with it. In fairness, Maine were awesome in terms of their customer service. They sent him 2 brand new bracelets, no questions asked, and the first one he had no problems at all in sizing. But if you look at that triangle at 12, it's slightly off to the right, as is the triangle on my Hudson Mark II, which has an uncomfortably sharp protruding case back as well. Now look, I'm not trying to write off Maine as a brand here or tell you to avoid them, because I don't think you should. I think all 3 of those are fantastic looking watches. I love the fact that they are doggedly insisting on sticking to 38mm as well. I think that's a bold move in the contemporary market, which is hovering around the 40. So to go for all small watches, I think is great. Prices also fantastic across the board with these. Perhaps a little bit too fantastic to bring me back to my original point. I would love to see them charge a little more for their watches, but ensure that the quality of their watches offers a little more. The lume, for example, should have been much better on the Greenwich than it was. The bracelets on the other ones and a couple of other little niggles here and there, I think could be ironed out very, very easily by changing suppliers or insisting on better quality from the suppliers. I think Maine would be a brand that was really going places if they did that. As it stands though, I still absolutely love this watch. I'm going to be giving it a lot of wrist time going forward. So there you have it. You've almost made it to the end of the video. Good for you, you must be a fan of the brand. If you are, why not check out 2 reviews of their previous models from the very early days of the channel. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.